Hey, I'm Decathlon Gamer. Welcome back to FM22 Youth Factory, episode number 63. We have a new coach, finally, for the first time in a while. Uh, since we were in Tier 3 and we redid whatever coaching staff we had there, some of them coming all the way from back when we were in Tier 4, meaning they've been with us for close on a decade at this point. Knutson is somebody that was a minor upgrade at goalkeeper. Goalkeeping coach, that is. But it's been hard with kind of the level we're at finding coaching staff for two reasons. One, the finances of it. A lot of coaches, better coaches, we just couldn't sign them because we couldn't afford them. But with the reputation we have, we're only getting so much in terms of available quality out there. And Knutson's, just that minor upgrade, but it's an upgrade. So finally, we have an upgrade at the coaching staff. The coaching staff's okay. They could certainly be better than they are. So it would be nice if we, get further upgrades at some point. But right now, there's nothing out there that will drastically change. There might be a attribute point or maybe 2 points better than what we have right now, but it would come at significantly higher cost. In fact, one of my coaches is still working for free. We've had him that long. He was back from like tier 5-ish, and he's not even being paid a salary. A few of them are being paid very little salary. There's only a couple that are getting paid too much. So we're keeping the staff costs fairly low for now, and without much of a difference between what they are for as little as they're paid versus what we could get to outpay the entire salary of our staff with one hiring. Big news, though, here is that we have, over the years, progressed our under 19s from lower tiers up into Group 1, meaning we are in the top flight of the under 19s. And this is where we had finally, over these, I think, last 2 years maybe, that we've been in the first flight, we finally were not the dominant team. We've always been first or second in the under 19s every year. There was one year where we had like half of our under 19s out on loan. We really, really let that one go that year, and the team struggled a little bit with a bunch of fill-ins, a bunch of randos playing for us, and they didn't perform quite as well. But last year in the under 19s, we were probably 6th or 7th place in this Group 1. This year, we were 3rd or 4th place pretty much all season. And right at the end, I'm assuming that meant some others might have gone out on loan or gotten called up or whatever the case may be. But our under 19s, maybe it was development, really turned it on late in the season. They were only plus 15 in the goal differential. That alone, though, was enough to claim the title. We caught Braun on, I think, the last day of the season, because the last I had checked, with a couple games to go, we were second place and we were a few points behind. But there you go. We got a huge one right at the end to win on goal differential the under 19s. So an under 19s title at the highest level we have for the under 19s just goes to show what we do have in our youth setup, and what it provides us, and where we have taken that team, at least to this point. But it's not having the reserves as an intermediary, not having that second team for guys to go out and play and develop before then coming up to the senior level, that's hurting us. And then obviously those training facilities and getting more development. We are capable of winning the top flight, I think, with what we have, if we can only get the training to come along and get those guys to realize their potential. Or so it would seem, if this is any indication of what we have at the youth level. So this big gray line is the youth setup cost. Last season, we spent $4.25 million in all expenses, all areas. 3.14, so three quarters of our overall expenses, 75%, was youth setup. But the wonderful thing, partially thanks to our league position and the payout from that, And then, yes, we actually were hit with a tax bill for, I think, the first time in our history. After the year was technically profitable, thanks to Edun. But also thanks to our sponsorship payouts. The combination of those two things actually left us, even though we've been at a negative balance for the last handful of months after our money trickled down throughout the year, that brought us back to almost a zero balance. We had about 16,000 in the bank. So we actually had a positive balance before Edun came and visited us today, but that now puts us at 3 million, because of course that was 3,100,000 give or take, and expenses that Edun has gifted us with. So balance is looking much better. You would hope that this season it would stay positive throughout the entirety of the season, and possibly with 3 million in the bank, the club may consider something, right? Last year we got a single something. It was a very cheap, very easy something, and that was, of course, a coaching badge. So we got something out of this playthrough finally, out of the board. We'll see what we can get this year. There's more than just two things that I might target. I will obviously target the first two, the primaries, the professional status, the training facilities. Those two targets are going to be the most impactful. Beyond that, if they again say no, now that we do have a balance, I'll wait to the 1st of January to just make sure everything kind of trickles in and the board realizes, after assessing finances, that, oh, yes, hey, look, we went from a negative balance at the beginning of December to now we have a healthy balance at the beginning of January. I don't know if they'll instantly recognize that we have finances. But anyway, come January 1st, I'll try those two things first and foremost. But there are some other options, like adding additional coaches, which would certainly help us. The more we can specialize, the more we can strengthen, the more we're going to have quality coaches in positions, even with low training facilities, will still improve our training. Therefore, we should see more progress. Even if it's barely more is still more. More is what it's going to take to get us to the next level. And how many years do we have to sit and twiddle our thumbs waiting for the board to finally go, okay, finances are good, let's turn pro, or let's upgrade those training facilities? I don't want to wait a bunch of years. So we will try a plan B scenario if those two primaries fail yet again this year. Also coming up in 5 days' time, could be impactful, is a new election for the board. And I believe our 2-term, 3-term board of directors head is stepping down. So there will be somebody new on the board, and I would love to finally, for the first time in the entirety of this series, I mean, it's 2036 now. It's about to be 2037. First time in this series, see the board actually do something. They have literally done nothing throughout this other than suffer through administration a single time. I would be thrilled, absolutely thrilled, if they actually, the new president of the board, would actually do something. Anything. Inject $1 million in cash. Turn us pro. Something. Them initiating something would be fan-freaking-tastic. By the way, we are 4 years going on 5 years since that administration phase left us behind, and we've paid off close to a third of the overall debt. There is another 10 years to go to pay it off the rest of the way, and of course that means we are essentially a third, or at least we will be in 4 months' time, 3.5 months' time. But of course, the way interest works, is, you're going to pay more interest up front. You're going to pay off more principal as time goes on. So, we're not exactly at a third, but timeline-wise, we're just about there. and Christian Nielsen has won the elections to take over as the chairperson, and he has no plans to provide the club with any investment. So we are 0 for a billion when it comes to our board doing anything whatsoever. I think this is the longest I've ever gone through a series and had no board positive outcomes whatsoever. Previous and current board, I've tried to negotiate with them the objectives, because for them, survival is all that they have in mind. And we are comfortably mid-table. We've improved by 5 or 6 points each season. We've already done 3 years now in the Obosligen. It's been 3 years already. It's happening quick. We are pushing higher and higher up the table. I don't know if this year we're going to be competing at the top, but I feel like, maybe we're climbing to 5th or 6th this season. We add that few more points. We get that little bit stronger season by season by season. Anyway, we're 2 to 3 years away from competing for promotion, I feel. And yet I can't even get the board to agree to a top half finish 3 years from now. They are so unrealistic. They are so pathetic in their lack of ambition. It's driving me nuts. So there was an odd thing that happened 4 or 5 seasons ago. And of course, it had to do with our administration system. So if you remember, we lost half the team on a free. They wouldn't sell anybody for money. They just gave away players. And nobody was willing to offer money because they knew they were giving away players. It was a weird cycle. So we brought a lot of the team back. What it ended up doing to us was where the board had previously to that point been thrilled. They were delighted season after season after season about us developing players using the club's youth system, because literally every single player has come from our youth system, every last one of them. But then we had the administration and we lost half the squad, and then half the squad came back, and suddenly half the squad was seen no longer as being developed by our youth system, but having come in via transfer. Even though that wasn't really the case, that's how the game was viewing it. Well, anyway, they were super upset, and they've been super upset for 4+ seasons. Finally, entering the 5th season since that time, they're finally back to being pleased about our development of young players. Now, of course, into the senior squad itself, there hasn't been that many over the last 5 years. It's been largely this same team. We've had a few new faces, so I do get it to an extent that it's been sparse, but it was just an odd thing that kind of caught us out. But board request time. We're going to start with the training facilities. So it's been rejected. They say current financial situation, we've got $3 million. I don't know what the major issue is, though. Obviously it's going to cost something. I don't know if it's going to cost $3 million, but depends on how big of an upgrade they're making in one jump. Our facilities are as good as any of our rivals? No, they are not. They're not even close. Our youth facilities are way ahead of everybody's, but our regular training facilities are nowhere near Tier 2 level. Not even close. One positive update, at least, is that we've been hovering around the 160 to about 190 salary for a while, and we've been hovering around that being the limitation that the board was setting on us, and having to be kind of careful on how I navigated that. I did have to tweak a couple of contracts. I've tried really hard throughout this series to keep the contracts organic, and players that wanted X amount, I'd negotiate and give them X amount. I've had just a couple of times where we've had somebody who was, massively overpaid compared to the rest of the team, and definitely not at the level of teammates, and we were completely out of funds to where I couldn't offer renewals. And of course, there's limitations on what we're trying to do with this playthrough. So I would take, like, say, a Lovas who's making 30K going, yeah, you're worth 10. And then that 20K in savings allowed us to do everybody else's contract the way they wanted, and, kept it organic. And ultimately he was making what he should versus what he was demanding. I've only had to do that a couple times. But it looks like we're not going to have to do that again anytime soon, because finally, I think largely in recognition to the better financial situation that we are now finding ourselves in, even though we're not getting anywhere so far on our board requests, on the real things that will make a difference, one small thing that's going to make at least a small difference is our budget has shot up from 200K last season, which we were over by about 20K. I mean, we were right to the limit. I've already increased it by 20K so far this season in new contracts that were just signed in the last day or two. For upcoming expiring contracts at the end of the year, but they have our budget has jumped to 640K, so massive increase. I mean, it's 3 times over what it was, and no longer a serious concern. We can definitely just pay them whatever they need to be paid. The only thing is that does add to the expenses, but at this point, not by a lot, really. Remember, our youth setup is $3.5 million. Our total team salary for the entire year at the moment is $250,000. So it's significantly less. It's really not a big deal to see that increase by 20,000, or to see that increase even by 100,000 as we continue to negotiate some contracts. So not too worried about that. And like I said, our staff salaries are pretty low as well. So all of that is good. The big thing is, give me professional status, please. Speaking of, I had already put my request in. They're not even allowing me to negotiate this one. We are rejected again. So for this year, we're going to be moving on to Plan B, obviously, now. At least Plan B has been a success. Of course, we did a Plan B last year in the coaching batch. I might add that into my Plan B for this year as well. We might not be able to get the big things happening right now until the finances are maybe a little bit higher. I mean, we got to 3 million, right? But it continues to decrease throughout the year. And then magically it goes up. Well, magically, you're done. But so I can see maybe where there's some reluctance to the board, because I see finances decline. But this is a small thing, and we do have money right now. And so smaller things seem to be working out in our favor. This one, that means maybe another coaching badge could be coming our way. Any progress we can make there is progress the team is going to see down that pipeline. So after evaluating where our biggest weakness was in terms of training, which technically it's fitness, but that's because we have 2 coaches and we need to have 2 in place because of the volume of the squad. 1 is not enough to do it. So where we have the strength and ability to each of them, 1 specialized in strength and 1 quickness, that one just doesn't pan out as is. We need kind of a 3rd coach in place to be the volume coach, and then 2 coaches can then focus on the quality side. But anyway, the biggest weakness out there was defending technical. It's the only thing under 3 stars in the regular categories. And so Peter Ritterseth is the one we found. Now, Peter Ritterseth is nowhere near the quality of the available coaches out there that are willing to sign for us that would drastically improve what we have. But for a coach slot, all the team is allowing me to do is get an amateur who will work for nothing. That's it. No salary. Rittersith signed for no salary whatsoever as an amateur. That's what he and Holth are both making, and they will not let us sign somebody even to part-time. Even though we are a semi-pro club, we cannot get a part-time additional coach. The assistant, yes. Myself, yes. But not the regular coaches. Lame. But that's why all we can get is 3 stars. Now, what that's going to do, though, is right now I am on 3 training categories. That is our week 1. Let's hope that we bump up one of the other 2 by removing this. No, not quite. Still at 3 stars across board. It's still an improvement to defending technical, though, so we'll take it. It's progress, even if it's minor. Continue with my plan B. I've now requested for a performance analyst. Apparently, having a performance analyst on staff does actually provide a boost to things such as player recovery, match fitness recovery. So having a performance analyst is good to have on your staff. It's not much of a compounding effect. Having a performance analyst kind of does the job. Having multiple performance analysts, they seem to just take whatever the top rating that you have, but it should provide us at least a little bit of a boost to our recovery and see players' fitness a little bit better throughout the season. All right, so final stage for this year's Plan B is yet another coaching badge. We're going for the Continental B license, and they have agreed to that one as well. So we have 2 new coaching staff. I'm going from Continental C to Continental B. I'm doing it largely during the off season, so that's going to help. This one, though, takes a while. It's 6 months, so it is going to be well into the season before that's actually finished. But either way, it's all progress. None of it cost that much for the club. Be nice to get those Plan A things going next year, though. It's frustrating that the real things that we need, we can't get. At least we are getting some minor things. I mean, I have 20 determination. The determination is all about convincing the board of things. But this board is so stubborn and so worthless. But at least, we're finally getting somewhere with them. It's just really minor stuff. It's intake day. We're going to be wrapping this episode up here shortly after this. We have a goalkeeper instantly right at 2.5 stars. Is that good enough to contend with Moen for the starting spot? Club will also have its first Pakistani player as a winger. Plenty of top-end talent. Handful, though, that look like they're definitely not going to make it. I would venture to say that we'll probably have up to 9 to retain, but like Clover here, if he really is only about 3.5 stars, at least 2 or 3 of these guys in the elite talents aren't necessarily going to be that elite, are they? But we generally keep about 6 or 7. And here is our first look at this intake group. There's definitely some players to remove right away. Definitely not good enough. Definitely not good enough. We're looking at probably not good enough. I'll have to see where he sits as that 55 overall, if that's good enough to contribute. But definitely not good enough. Not good enough now or ever kind of scenario on that one. Same here and here. And I'd say this one as well. So we're going to eliminate those real quick, and then we'll evaluate the other ones. Nygaard is only going to stick around if that current ability is in exactly the right place. He's got just the right skill set. Otherwise, he'll be gone because he's got no room for growth. So I've cut it down to 8 recruits. 6 of them are 100-plus type recruits, and then 2 falling below that, one at 97, one at 88. And for those 2, I like Granley a little bit better in terms of being well better off at the start here. But of the 8, they've only been training with the club, 3 days now or something like that. So their training ratings are much lower than everybody else's because they don't have your recent history that they have. But in the short few days that they've been with us, the 2 that are training the best, that are already, close to a quarter of a point above the others, are those 2. So there is hopes that they can develop pretty rapidly and maybe contribute. Therefore, I will hang on to them, especially when one of those are a defender. I like that 3 of the entire group are defenders. That could and should help us out a little bit with their growth rate. And I'll get the contracts worked out on those, and then we'll check in where the team is at, because it looks like we have definitely had some progress in our U19s, and we might actually have a handful of players that are ready to step up this season, but we don't know for sure if that's going to be the case. Of the 4 graduates that aged out of the U19s, none of those 4, at least on first appearance, none of those 4 were worthwhile. I've already eliminated a couple of them. I've already loaned out one of them, and I'm not sure who the 4th one was just yet. If I look closely, I could figure it out. With the contracts reworked, here is the U19s as it looks right now. We're looking at just a handful of players, really just a few players below the 45 mark. We're getting some pretty good development out of our U19s these days. So I'm really happy with how that is progressing. A lot of players in the 50s, starting to get a handful in the upper 50s on the verge of 60, and where 2 seasons ago we had 1 player in the U19s over 60. Last season we noted that it had risen to 3 or 4, and now look at this number. This has gone up a ton. And Netskar, the 15-year-old who comes in and joins us, is the only intake player joining that list. The rest of these guys, all of it was through straight up development over the course of the past season. Foss was somebody we had previously noted was, into the 60s. I want to say he was maybe a 62, 63 last season, and then there was a couple of 60, 61s. That was it. All of a sudden, we're looking at a bunch of players on the verge of a 70 overall, which is a starter to definitely squad player status compared to the senior squad, which means we are going to have to do some head-to-head comparisons with the roster, with the squad, to see where we're at. Let's go ahead and check in where that senior squad is at this time. And I'm going to have to break this down position by position to see, because there could be multiple players here. I'd say there's a good 10 candidates for the first squad. I'm not going to be bringing up 10 candidates, but there's that many that could, depending on positional needs and how these attributes are actually distributed for these guys, for how many of them are actually ready. I'm gonna guess that I'll have about 3 ready to come up. All right, so here is the senior squad. Holmdale, top man at a 94, starting out training horribly right now because he's super pissed at us that we have not sold him to the billion offers that he's had. It would be nice if somebody would offer us $1 billion for him. Right now, they have exceeded 100,000 already, though, so there's actually a pretty good chance that those offers are going to grow and grow and grow, and we might lose Holmdale sooner rather than later. Jansson's another one that we're getting tens of thousands in terms of offer. He's also very mad at us currently that we have not allowed him to leave. So those 2 players are quite unsettled right now due to interest from bigger clubs. But Andreasen at a 90, but he doesn't have room to progress. Jonas Gay is making progress. He's on the verge of hitting a 90, but then we see that drop off. Modeste has not been improving. He's upset at being the backup to Andreasen. Problem with both of those guys is they are nearing their potential. Bergam, I think did get a +1 last season on his current ability, but he just has not developed the last few years after he initially shot up to the mid-70s. He's been stuck there ever since. 189 goals now. He's nearing 200 for the club. And Karzik is good, but not good. He has some attributes. They're just not well distributed. So he remains as a backup. Ostby, what he could be versus what he is. And he was that first one who really shot up. Still, I don't think I'll ever forget how Ostby was our first key player. And ever since he got to the low mid-70s, he completely stalled out. He has so much more potential. He got unsettled 1 year from offers coming along and us not accepting, and he has stalled out ever since. And it's so frustrating because we've seen a dozen players shoot past him when he was, the original player to actually take off. Moen's up to a 69, so goalkeeping wise, there's a good chance he'll stay between the sticks this season, but he's definitely got some competition. But that's 60 plus. Hogginson, way down the list. That is all 60 plus. But of course, we now have all of those 60 to 70 range U19s that are going to fit into this set. So how many of them could actually have an impact on the squad? That's something we're going to have to break down to understand. Now, these guys back here, from anything underneath Severetti, they're still just, they're not good enough. Tangerud is somebody who is finally happy. He has been just a constant nag in our side for the longest time, but Tangerud is finally happy and developing. He's gone from the upper 40s into the mid 50s. If he could progress into the 60s, he could finally contribute like he's wanted to. Wichney continues to make slow gains. Goalkeepers are just so hard to bring along. Though Moen has definitely progressed. He was about a 61. He has increased. I just don't know how long that's taken. It's very slow. It's definitely playing time related for him. But yeah, this bottom group, unregistered, not ready to contribute. Madsen is the other one. So there's our first three graduates. And there is number 4. You may have noticed a certain person of a non-requisite height is gone from the club. Jakobsen, the original captain, long-term captain of the club, is no longer with us. His contract was up. We let him go. Christopher Al also gone. So those 2 longtime servants of the club are done. So we have 6 goalkeepers at the club these days. Moen is still the best, but new man Netskar, we're going to definitely leave him at the U19 level, as he's not good enough to take over right now, and he's got some potential. I would love to see him develop and then become the guy next season. So we'll definitely stick with Moen for this year. Wolf, now at 18, has also progressed a bit. He did go out on loan, I think, last season and got 7 starts. He went out late in the year for that one. Wichney did the same years ago, but he's been the backup for the last couple of seasons. You can see there's definitely players that are better than him, but at the moment he's actually training well, finally, and has progressed. Mason, I think, is still with the U19, so we'll leave him and we'll leave that set. But Jonas is one of those guys who has gone up. Now, I've already released 1 goalkeeper, so we were at 7. But Jonas, I'm hanging on to. He has super high reflexes, which is a good start. He has good aerial reach and okay handling. So he's got a few of the key attributes that make a good goalkeeper. He is also somebody who has shown development. And so we're going to loan him out and see what happens. I don't think he's ever going to make it, but we'll give him that benefit of the doubt for the next year or two and see if there's any change, if there's any significant change. If he's suddenly, into the 60s, then he'll be worth hanging on to. But otherwise, Jonas looks like he's a little out of his element compared to the others. But I'm really excited about Netskar as the primary coming out of this intake. If he's got the stuff to develop rapidly, he looks like our first ever kind of top end goalkeeper. Moen's done an okay job. He's had 175 starts for us, but Moen's never been fantastic. He's very average, or slightly below average. He performs okay, but there could and should be a better option. After we lost our best ever player in Haukeberg, center back's been a real problem position for a long time. I mean, of course, we had Jakobsen, who was just crazy short and could not hit a header for the life of him, but otherwise was good. And, the days where that was something you could cover and get away with are long gone. We're at a level now that type of weakness is just unacceptable. And we still have some serious weakness in our back line. Fololi, who's not a center back naturally, is the best option, but he's not. And he was okay last season with it, but he's really kind of just filling in because we have such a desperate need. Gillo has done okay. Hogginson off the bench has done okay. Severede has always done okay, but he's only a 58 current ability. He's super disappointing because he never trains well. He's suspended frequently. He's got very high potential. You look around and he's the best talent, and yet at age 30 has never developed past a 58 current ability. 370 appearances for us, and that's it. That's all he's got. He's half of what he could have developed into, not even half. So crazy disappointing that he never found anything. I would love to replace him. Obviously, he's just not good. Not good. Let's take our first comparison though, because now at 18, Foss has shown some definite improvement. But he's a right back first. He's a wing back. Is he good enough to play in a back three? I think Severede has really set himself up to be that guy that we draw comparisons on right now. And you can see Foss absolutely more attacking, better mentally, but he is showing some weaknesses. He's not as good aerially. He's not good on that direct one-on-one defending. But what would happen if we put him into the senior squad? How quickly would he develop into that guy? And there's that thing about Severede. He's a 12 defending and a 10 aerial, and he's got some speed and he's got some physicality. He's got just core defensive attributes. He's got nothing else, but he's got some core defensive attributes. He's got no vision, no attacking, no technical. He's really poor mentally. Even the physicals aren't that good. It's just that he's got that base that makes him hard to bump out of the starting lineup. Now, talk about looking in a mirror. Olim, the next guy down the list, is slightly rated above Severede, and he's almost identical. Now, this one is tempting because at 16 years of age and has shown improvement, I wouldn't be surprised at all if in a month's time he can push out that physicality, get a little more speed, but more importantly, push any of those identical, the defending, mental, or aerial attributes up a little bit. And he's already providing more offense 2-1 compared to Severede. Severede's ratings are so bad. Doesn't take much to be better than him, but Olim is. And yeah, I would be tempted. They're the same height. He's a lot skinnier, 20 pounds lighter than Severide. Hence the physicality being a little bit less, but you can train that. Lee Haug is somebody that I've already sent out on loan for the year. Really happy that I've done so because this guy is all over the place. He doesn't know what his position is. He wants to be a striker. He wants to be a center back. He wants to be a fullback. He can't make up his mind, and his attribute distribution is worthless. He has no qualities in any of the right places, meaning I don't think he's ever going to have a future with us. 20 years of age, he's on loan. Maybe they can shape him into something useful because he's going to need massive changes to get anywhere. I just don't see that happening. Now, Madsen is somebody who's definitely showing progress, at least right now. He's developing pretty rapidly, and there are some things to like about him. The vision, the technical, the mental. He's there aerially. The defending is close enough that you would want to give him the start, but the physicality and the speed are just way off where they need to be. So Tersh Madsen is probably a permanent pass. I doubt this guy is going to develop into the player we would need him to be when he's that slow. One of the intake players we just got in is a 55-130 in Mats Holth. He's matching the best prospect that we have, and at 15, hopefully we'll actually see him make gains. And I'm excited with that high end that, and starting out at a 55, that he could become a key piece to this team if he does develop. So we have switched him from being a right back to the central defender and focusing on his quickness, as that's his big weakness. He's got some good mental attributes right now. He's got some good physical attributes. So he has strength, he has mental, and he's got some technical ability. And he's not terrible on his defensive skill set right now. He's got really good jumping reach. So refine a few skills, and he could be, in a year or two, he could definitely be a starting center back for us. Right now, our backup at the senior level is Hogginson. And Hogginson, at 24 years of age, did develop a little bit when he first got called up, but he not only has stopped developing, he started to fall away a little bit. He's not quick enough. He does have the aerial ability. His defending is only so-so. And when you compare him to Foss, the first one we looked at, Foss definitely has more speed, definitely has more physicality. It's just the aerial part that is lacking. And I think Foss at 18 might be ready to at least take over from Hogginson and be the chief backup. His issue is he's a little bit shorter, but at 5'10", at least he's no Jakobsen. I mean, he's more than half a foot taller. But he is a bit small. I think I might give Foss a little bit longer on that development at the U19s, because right now he's equivalent of the backup, not of the starters. So I think we stick with the starters for now and let Foss develop one more year. But I am excited for him, hopefully, to come in and take over from Severetti next season from the off, so that he can continue that development and be that guy. All right, folks. Well, we don't have time to go through all of the positions. I know I've quickly turned this in from a short episode to a long episode in just the discussion of a couple of positions. I'm going to continue to go through and analyze the others and see if there's anybody who has earned the right to move up. This is where we had the greatest need, and we are so close in Raymond Foss to making that happen. And maybe we do go mid-season and do that and bring him along if he gets to 70 plus. He's got the right attributes. He's almost got the right attribute distribution, but he's a little more all around as opposed to being a defensive specialist. So no immediate call-ups from any of the other positions. There's a lot of players that are just about ready. They're ready to take over the backup job away from somebody else, but none of them are ready to take over the starters' jobs. If they're in the U19s, they're going to get that playing time, and as I've seen, the U19s are developing definitely better than the senior squad for the most part, unless you get the right guy. But it's in the starting lineup where they're making those progressions. So if they're going to come in as a backup and ride the bench, it's just not going to go as well. Now, maybe, right, we can get him playing for the U19s, and it's tricky, especially if we are quick-simming pretty much the entire season yet again. And so getting that playing time sorted out from senior squad level, being available U19s, I don't know how well that's going to work with me on vacation for pretty much the entire season. So we'll leave him in the U19s, let him develop that one more year, but I definitely see a handful of players, or at least a few players next season being ready to come up and probably go straight into the first team, or at least be some really solid backups and solid upgrades there, which is something we haven't had for a little while. I mean, we've had Homedale, obviously, and that's it. I mean, Heistad at 20 is just scratching the surface. In fact, I'm just now naming him to the bench for the first time. We had Uleberg, and Uleberg quickly went on his way being sold last year. So, and they're trying to get Homedale now, and that's the problem that I'm currently experiencing with young players. Jansson's the other one that we've brought up, and those two have gone straight to the top, and that's the thing. You get the right youth player who's developing, and then you can get them into the first team. They can develop really quickly. Both Homedale and Janssen, we got lots of first team opportunities in their first season. Got them to be starters by their second season, full on, and you've seen them rise right to the top of what we have. If I don't handle it right with those other guys, they're going to stall out like all of those young 20-somethings that are distant backups and not getting into the side. And we definitely need some younger players getting into the side, because we are suddenly reaching, for the first time, an issue that we've never experienced. Osby is 29. Lavas is 28. Calzi is 30. Severetti is 30. Jakobsen was already 30. He was about to turn 31. So age, not quite a factor yet, but it's on the verge of becoming one. These guys are going to break into their 30s, and they're going to begin to decline in about a season, or more like 2 to 3 seasons from now. But that means we're going to need steady replacements coming in, and not just that internal development. Of course, we've had the occasional outgoing of our best players being plucked away by other teams. That looks like it could happen with Homedale this season, especially if he's not training and developing right now. That could be well, I don't know if that would be a factor. I think that's a factor for me. I don't think the board would take into account that his training ratings are poor when they sell him off for less than what I would want them to. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. I'm Decathlon Gamer. Like, comment, subscribe. See you next time. Have a good one. Be safe out there, and bye for now.